For 20 years I thought our family's annual tradition was just an early morning adventure, until I discovered the shocking truth that could have sent us all to prison. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to admit something like this online. But I guess that's the magic of the internet. Anonymity makes confession sound almost romantic. Plus, I'm 29 now, and the statute of limitations might have passed. At least, I hope it has. If not, well, it was nice knowing you all. I should start with some context. Every year, since I could remember, my family had this weird little tradition that happened on the first weekend of June. My mom called it opening day. Not the baseball kind, and not the fishing kind, either. It was the day we'd all wake up at 3 a.m., pack thermoses of coffee, toss a suspicious number of coolers into the back of Dad's truck, and drive out to a little patch of land by the river. Dad always said the land belonged to his old friend, Rick, but I never met Rick, or heard from Rick, or saw anything that suggested Rick was a real human being. We'd park under a mess of old willow trees, put on gloves, and split into teams. My sister and I always went with Dad. Mom would team up with our cousin Jimmy, and we'd all start collecting. I put that in quotes because, well, I never actually knew what we were doing was illegal until I was in my 20s. Here's the thing, what we were collecting wasn't berries, it wasn't flowers, and it sure as hell wasn't just rocks. Like my parents used to tell us when we were little, we were collecting copper, not buy it at the hardware store copper. I'm talking thick, industrial-grade cables. Dad had this ancient pair of bolt cutters that could bite through anything. And he'd hand me and my sister these canvas bags to stuff the coals into. I remember thinking it was just some kind of scavenger hunt. Kids will believe anything if you tell them it's tradition. The first time I got suspicious was when I was 12. I noticed Dad was wearing work gloves that weren't his. They had some faded company logo on them, and some of the copper cables we were finding were still attached to big wooden spools, like the kind utility companies use. I asked him about it, and without missing a beat, he said, "Rick works for the power company. These are just scraps they were gonna throw out." And I bought it. For years, I bought it. Why wouldn't I? Parents are supposed to tell you the truth, right? Fast forward to last summer. I was home visiting for the weekend. It was early June, which meant, of course, opening day. I hadn't been since I moved out at 19. But Dad looked so happy when he asked me to come along that I couldn't say no. It was just like I remembered. The 3 a.m. wake up, the coffee, the coolers. Only now, instead of my little canvas bag, Dad handed me a heavy-duty duffel. I swear, that thing could fit a small refrigerator. We got to the spot. Only this time, I noticed there were fresh nitrogen monoxide trespassing signs nailed to the fence posts, big red letters, and the fence wasn't the old rusted wire I remembered. It was brand new, with a padlocked gate. Dad didn't even slow down. He just drove the truck around the side, through a break in the trees, and parked like it was the most normal thing in the world. My sister jumped out, tossed me a pair of wire cutters, and grinned. That's when I finally asked, "Hey, do we actually have permission to be here?" There was this awkward pause. Like a glitch in the Matrix, before Dad said, "We've been doing this for years, it's fine." We worked for about an hour before I heard a low rumble. Not thunder of an engine, a big one. Moments later, a white utility truck rolled up on the dirt road. Headlights slicing through the early morning mist. I froze. Dad didn't. He just kept cutting cable like nothing was happening. The truck stopped about 20 feet away, and a man in a reflective vest got out. He had that authoritative walk, the kind that says, "I get paid to tell people they're in trouble." He shouted something about company property and calling the cops. And suddenly my heart was beating in my ears. That's when Dad did something I will never forget. He stood up, dusted off his gloves, and said, "Rick said it was fine." And just like that, I knew Rick wasn't real. The utility guy started walking toward us. And Dad gave me this look. Not angry, not scared, more like calculating. He muttered, "Take the duffel and go to the truck." Now, I did. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. And wow, that thing was heavy. I tossed it in the back, climbed into the passenger seat, and waited. When Dad came back 5 minutes later, he was smiling, like he'd just won a game. Nobody knew we were playing. He started the engine, pulled away slowly, and didn't say a word until we were halfway home. "That guy's not gonna call anyone," he finally said. "We're fine." I didn't ask why. I didn't want to know. But here's where it gets weird. Later that night, I was scrolling through the local news on my phone when I saw a headline, "Copper Theft. Investigation leads to major arrests." The article mentioned several people being caught stealing copper wire from a decommissioned power station by the river. Only, it wasn't fully decommissioned. Some of the lines were still active. And apparently, stealing that wire could cause blackouts. I didn't recognize the names of the people arrested, but I recognized the location in the blurry photo. It was our spot. The article didn't say who the primary suspect was, just that police were pursuing leads. And in that moment, my brain did the math. We'd been doing this for years. Copper prices had skyrocketed recently. Dad somehow always had cash, even when his contracting business was slow. And the worst part, I couldn't decide if I was more horrified or impressed. I confronted Dad the next morning. I didn't accuse him outright. I just said I'd seen the article, and I knew. He didn't deny it. He just poured himself coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and said, "We never took from active lines. At least, not until last year. And we only did that because I cut him off." I didn't want to hear the justification, but then he leaned back, like he was about to tell me a bedtime story, and said something that made the hair on my arms stand up. "This started with your grandfather, back in the 70s. Only back then, it wasn't copper, it was cars. Stolen cars. We'd strip them for parts. Everyone in the family pitched in. Your mom's side too. It's how we paid for the house you grew up in." I just sat there, staring at him, realizing my entire childhood was funded by felony activity. Now here's the hook of the part that made me realize this whole thing was way bigger than I thought. 3 weeks after that conversation, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a small wooden box, old and worn, with my initials carved into the lid. I opened it and found a single copper coil, polished to a shine, sitting on a bed of black velvet. Underneath it was a note in my dad's handwriting, "For when it's your turn." That was last month. I haven't told anyone in my family that I got it. It's sitting on my bookshelf right now, looking both innocent and guilty at the same time. I don't know if I'm supposed to carry on the tradition or burn the whole thing to the ground. What I do know is this: family traditions are a lot more complicated when they're federal crimes. If you're wondering whether I'll ever go on another opening day, the answer is no. Probably. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this.